I have spent the last 70 years of my life grading the intelligence of others, but only now, at 99, do I realize that I was the student who most desperately needed a passing grade in humanity. My name is Harold Weston, and I dedicated every waking hour to the cold, clinical pursuit of academic perfection, grading tens of thousands of papers, revising complex doctoral theses, and chasing a prestige that in the final hour feels like nothing more than dust on a forgotten shelf. I taught thousands of bright young minds how to analyze history, how to decipher the most intricate philosophies, and how to build careers that the world would envy. I was the man who had all the answers in the lecture hall, the authority who never stumbled over a fact. Yet I failed miserably on the only question that actually mattered for a soul. While I was obsessing over whether my students truly understood the nuances of Aristotelian ethics, I was neglecting to practice the basic ethics of being present for the people who shared my name and my home. I lived for the prestige of titles and the respectful silence of a crowded auditorium. But today, the silence that surrounds me in my own study is deafening. I discovered far too late that life is not an exam you pass or fail based on your intellect. It is a collection of moments you either decide to inhabit or choose to ignore. I ignored most of them in the name of a productivity that serves me not at all as I face the end. The tragedy of an intellectual life is that we often mistake knowing about things for actually experiencing them. I could lecture for 3 hours on the importance of community and social bonds in ancient Rome, but I couldn't tell you the names of my neighbor's children for 30 years. I was so busy being Professor Weston that I forgot how to be Harold. My study was my fortress, a place where I felt safe and powerful behind walls of leather-bound books and mahogany. But those books cannot hold my hand today, and the mahogany is just cold wood. I remember a specific evening in 1968. My son Thomas came into this very room with a drawing he was immensely proud of. I barely looked up from my grading. I told him, "Not now, son, I have to finish these evaluations. Your education depends on my work." What an arrogant lie that was. His education didn't depend on my overtime. His heart depended on my attention. I gave him a trust fund instead of a father, and now he calls me once a month out of a sense of duty, not out of a desire to share his life. He learned the lesson I taught him too well, that work is the only God worth serving. I see so many of you today repeating my syllabus of errors. You are convinced that if you just work a little harder, if you get that one extra certification, or if you reach that next tier of professional respect, you will finally be enough. You treat your life like a rough draft that you can always edit later. But I am here to tell you that there is no final draft. This is it. You are living the only version of your story that will ever exist. I watched colleagues of mine drop dead a week after their retirement parties, men who had spent 40 years saving their joy for a future that was never guaranteed to them. They were brilliant men who understood the laws of physics and the complexities of economics, yet they were fools when it came to the simple math of time. They spent their lives preparing to live, but they never actually lived. I am 99 years old, and I would trade every honorary degree and every published article I've ever written for the chance to go back to 1968 and put down my red pen to look at my son's drawing for just 5 minutes. The most dangerous thing about the trap I fell into is that it feels productive. When you are grading papers or climbing the ladder, the world applauds you. They call you dedicated, ambitious, and successful. No one gives you an award for sitting on the porch with your wife and watching the sunset. No one applauds you for taking a long walk with an old friend. Because those things can't be measured, we assume they don't count. But at the end of the road, those are the only things that remain. I looked through my old calendars recently. Decades of appointments faculty meetings, and deadlines. Not one of those urgent items matters to me now. What matters is the memory of the way the light used to hit the kitchen table when my wife was still alive, and how I usually spent those mornings reading the academic journal instead of looking at her face. I was physically in the room, but I was miles away in a world of ideas. I was a ghost in my own marriage, and the regret of that absence is a weight that no amount of intellectual prowess can lift. If you are listening to this, I want you to give yourself an F in productivity today. I want you to fail at your to-do list so you can succeed at your life. Go to the park. Call the person you've been meaning to call when things slow down. Because things never slow down, they only stop. I used to tell my students that the unexamined life is not worth living, but I missed the second half of that truth. The unlived life is not worth examining. Don't become a library of information while remaining an empty house of experiences. I've seen the smartest people in the world die with the most basic regrets. They didn't wish they had published more. They wished they had loved more. They wished they had been sillier, kinder, and more present. They realized far too late that the real world wasn't in their offices or their bank accounts. It was in the messy, unquantifiable, beautiful relationships they neglected in the pursuit of progress. I think about a student I had back in the late 80s, a young man named David. He was brilliant, one of the sharpest minds I had ever seen. He had a full scholarship to an Ivy League law school waiting for him. But in his senior year, he came to me and said he was turning it down. He wanted to go back to his small hometown to run his family's hardware store and be near his ailing mother. I was horrified. I told him he was wasting his potential, that he was throwing away a chance to be someone. I gave him a lecture on ambition that I thought was profound. David looked at me with a clarity I wouldn't possess for another 30 years and said, "Professor, I think you're confusing being a someone with being a success. I'd rather be a success to my mother than a someone to a room full of strangers." I gave him a look of disappointment and dismissed him. Today, I realized David was the teacher, and I was the one who failed the test. He understood that potential isn't just about what you can achieve. It's about who you can be for others. The culture of more is a starvation diet for the soul. It keeps you hungry for things that don't satisfy and makes you ignore the feast that is already in front of you. My house is filled with artifacts of my success, plaques, awards, and leather-bound copies of my own books. They are cold and silent. They don't care that I'm lonely. They don't care that I'm tired. I spent 70 years building a monument to myself, and now I have to live inside it alone. If I could give you one assignment, one final exam for your own life, it would be this. Look at your current schedule and find the things you are doing just for the sake of status or security, and cut them in half. Take that reclaimed time and invest it in something that has no ROI, no profit margin, and no career benefit. Invest it in a person. Invest it in a hobby that makes you feel like a child again. Invest it in the quiet joy of simply being alive, without needing to justify your existence through work. I am 99, and the clock is no longer a tick-tick. It is a countdown. I don't have time to be polite about these truths anymore. You are being lied to by a system that wants you to be a human doing rather than a human being. It wants your energy, your focus, and your best years, and in exchange, it promises you a comfortable retirement where you will be too tired and too disconnected to enjoy it. Don't wait for the gold watch to start living. The watch is a bribe for the time you've already lost. James Whitfield, a man I knew who walked away from a $100 million empire at 42, was the only truly wealthy man I ever met. He understood that the only currency that matters is time, and he refused to spend it on things he didn't love. I spent my currency on grading papers and now my account is nearly empty. When I look back at my 70 years in the classroom, the moments that actually shine through the fog of memory aren't the lectures or the awards. They are the moments when a student's eyes lit up because they finally felt seen. They are the moments when I actually listened to a colleague instead of waiting for my turn to speak. They are the moments when I let the mask of the professor slip and just became a man. Those moments are so few because I was so afraid of losing my authority. I thought that if I wasn't the smartest person in the room, I was nothing. What a heavy, lonely way to live. You don't have to be the smartest, the richest, or the most successful. You just have to be there, truly, deeply, and fully there. The world has enough experts. What it needs are more people who know how to love. I want you to imagine yourself at 99, sitting in this chair, looking back at your life today. What will you be glad you did? Will you be glad you stayed until 8 p.m. to finish that report? Will you be glad you bought the slightly more expensive car to impress people you don't even like? Or will you be glad you took the afternoon off to go to the zoo with your daughter? Will you be glad you had that long, difficult, honest conversation with your partner? The answer is so obvious when you're at my age, but it's so easy to ignore when you're in the thick of it. The urgent things are rarely the important things. Your emails will be deleted. Your titles will be replaced. Your legacy in the office will be forgotten in a week. But your legacy in the hearts of the people you loved, that is the only thing that survives the fire. I have many students who are now retired themselves. They come to visit me sometimes and they tell me about their careers and their achievements. I listen and I smile, but I always ask them the same question: who loves you? Some of them look confused. They start talking about their professional networks or their reputation. I stop them and ask again, no, who truly knows you and loves you? Who can you call at 2 a.m.? The ones who can answer that question are the ones I consider my most successful students, regardless of their GPA. The ones who can't, even the ones who became judges or CEOs, are the ones I worry about. They are the ones who followed my example instead of my advice. Don't be a success in the world and a failure at home. It is a price too high to pay. As I prepare to hand in my own final exam to the universe, I feel a strange mixture of regret and peace. Regret for the years I spent asleep at the wheel of my own life, but peace because I finally understand the lesson. It took me 99 years to realize that the most important thing I ever owned wasn't my intellect or my reputation. It was my heart. And my heart was never meant to be used for grading papers. It was meant to be used for loving people. I hope that by sharing my failure, I can help you find your own success. I hope you have the courage to be unambitious in the eyes of the world, so you can be heroic in the eyes of your family. I hope you choose the person over the paper every single time. My energy is low now, and the library is getting dark. I have a few more books to read, not because I need to know more, but because I enjoy the stories. My assistant tells me I should ask you to like this video and subscribe to the channel. I suppose that's the modern version of a student showing up for class. I don't mind it. I just hope you didn't just hear my words, but that you actually felt them. Your life is a precious, fleeting gift. Stop treating it like a chore or a competition. You've already won just by being here. Now go out and spend your time on something that doesn't have a grade attached to it. Go be human. Thank you for being my final class. I've learned more from this reflection than I ever did from my 70 years of teaching. If this lesson meant something to you, please join our community and tell me in the comments, what is the real lesson you're learning right now? I'd like to read your thoughts before I close the book for good. This is Professor Harold Weston, dismissed. Go home. Your life is waiting for you.